That afternoon, I sat, curled up in my tiny third-floor apartment, the kind of place where every gust of wind slipping through the window crack sent the curtains flying, like a reminder that winter was knocking. Outside, San Diego was hazy, the pale orange sunset reflecting off the dusty glass. On the table sat a cold cup of coffee and a stack of bills I had paid on someone else's behalf. A text lit up my phone screen, curling one corner of my mouth. Harper, don't forget to grab a chocolate cake and number 63 candles. Mom likes the ones with buttercream. A message from June, my sister. No thanks. No. Are you busy? It read like a grocery order. Like I was the family's unpaid logistics coordinator. I snapped my laptop shut, stood up, threw on my old coat, and reminded myself, just one more night. My mom's 63rd birthday party was being held at their three-bedroom townhouse in Golden Hill, the same place they proudly called the family home. Every time I stepped inside, not a soul knew I was the silent name on the deed, bought with a small inheritance from my grandmother and more than 7 years of grinding freelance graphic design work that drained every ounce of me. I, Harper Douglas, 34 years old, lived alone in a 400-square-foot studio where the living room and bedroom were one, and the kitchen ended in a single step. No one had ever asked how I managed. They just liked to joke about my place, calling it the rat box. Tonight was no different. Harper, I just don't get why you insist on punishing yourself, June said sweetly, swirling her glass of white wine as she glanced at my worn-out shoes. Living in that shoebox. It's like self-inflicted misery. I gave a thin smile and quietly placed the cake on the counter. From the living room, my father, Richard Douglas, was laughing with some old friends, while my mother, Elaine, was busy showing off a new cashmere scarf. None of them had a clue that the roof repair last summer, nearly $9,000, came from my savings, or that the annual property tax had been paid, on time, by me, every single year. You should think about finding a decent place to live, my father said when he noticed me standing silently in the kitchen. People look at where you live and feel sorry for you. That apartment just isn't fit for a grown woman. I nodded, said nothing. That's how I'd survived, by keeping quiet. My mother glanced at me, nodded in agreement, her voice soft as silk but cold as ice. Harper, I just want you to live up to your potential. A smart girl like you shouldn't be living like some undergrad. No one questioned why I had no mortgage. No one wondered why I didn't have kids like June. No one saw the utility bills in my name. No one asked who paid nearly $2,500 to fix the heating system 3 months ago. They didn't need to know, but I was starting to see it clearly. They never wanted to know. June leaned in, whispered in a syrupy voice laced with venom. Don't you ever feel ashamed? Living like that, it's like you never really grew up. I turned away, avoiding my mother's watchful eyes. They didn't use knives. They used words, sharp and well-aimed, always cutting where I was weakest. I looked around the room, filled with laughter, golden lighting, and the heavy scent of food. This used to be something I wanted to preserve for them. Now it felt like a weight I wasn't sure I could carry anymore. In that moment, while June touched up her lipstick and Mom posed for a photo beside Dad, I felt it. They didn't truly know who I was, and I was too tired to keep playing the invisible character in their favorite performance. Quietly, I opened my phone and scrolled through a series of unread messages from my attorney. The last line stood out. Harper, if you are ready to exercise your rights as the legal owner, I have all the paperwork prepared. I gripped the phone tighter. My mother's birthday had just begun. I was ready to end something. That Thanksgiving evening, light rain tapped against my car's roof as I parked in front of the townhouse my parents lived in, as though it were theirs. The smell of roasted chicken wafted all the way to the steps. I took a deep breath and entered like an uninvited guest. The air inside reeked of perfume and cranberry sauce, Laughter echoed from the living room. June was showing off a new nude purse to a cousin from Oregon, while my mother eagerly pointed out her imported Italian wine rack, something she'd never paid a dime for. Before I could take off my coat, my father, Richard, called out from the dining room. "Harper, come sit. I have something to share with the family." I stepped into the dining room, where everything was laid out in overdone perfection. Silver cutlery, lace tablecloths, expensive candles. It was laughable, knowing I'd just paid the utility bill the week before, and they still believed some kind-hearted landlord was covering for them. My mom lifted a glass of red wine, tapped it with a spoon. "Let's toast to another warm Thanksgiving together. Your father has a few words." He stood up, swaying slightly, gripping his brimming wineglass. He wouldn't look at me, only stared ahead like he was preparing to release a truth he'd been rehearsing. I messed up. I need help." The room fell silent. Even the clink of cutlery stopped. My mother set her glass down slowly, and June furrowed her brow with visible curiosity. "Who do you owe?" I asked, my voice steady in a way that surprised even me. He inhaled deeply, fingers trembling as he placed his glass on the table. "Some guys. From the card games in Bakersfield. It's around 21,000. My chest tightened, not at the number, but at how everyone watched me, waiting. No shock, no guilt. Just the unspoken understanding that the solution sat at the end of the table with a half-eaten slice of bread and a job in design. As if this had all been arranged and I was just here to finish what they started. June was the one who broke the silence. "You could sell that Prius. Market value's at least $20,000 now. That'd cover almost all of it." I let out a dry laugh. "You mean I should walk to work so your husband can keep driving mom's car to your spa appointments?" My mom jumped in instantly, her voice flat like she was reading from a script at one of her women's club meetings. "Harper, you don't have kids, no mortgage, you live alone, no one depends on you. June, on the other hand, she has a whole family to care for." "A family?" I snapped, unable to hold back. "She's the only one in this house without a single bill under her name." My mother's face twitched for a moment, but she kept her usual calm. "You're in a better position. Think of your father. These people? They don't mess around." I turned to my dad and looked at him for a long moment. He avoided my eyes, already reaching for another full glass of wine. "Are you going to promise to pay it back? Like you temporarily borrowed my college fund?" My dad opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, then closed it again. I gave a slight nod. It was all clear now. My mother exhaled heavily, her hand tightening around a cloth napkin. "If you don't help, this could spiral out of control." June clicked her tongue. "I really don't get why you always have to be so difficult. Sometimes I think you want this family to suffer." I set my fork down on the plate of roast chicken. "They paid to fix the roof without anyone knowing. I've covered the property taxes for 5 years, even paid for the plumbing repairs 2 months ago. So who's really been holding this place up? Who's pretending not to see what's in front of them?" My father slammed his glass down, voice rough. "You can't turn your back on your family over a little grudge." I stood up, grabbed my coat from the chair. "This isn't a grudge, it's a boundary. It's enough. I won't be used anymore." "Harper!" My mom raised her voice. "If you walk out that door tonight, don't expect to come back." I looked her straight in the eye. "You don't have to worry. This place was never really home." I left the house. The sound of the door slamming behind me felt like the final punctuation to a break that had been building for years. The night wind brushed against my collar, but I didn't feel cold. In my hand, the house key rested quietly, proof of a truth they never deserved to know. Sliding into the car, I locked the door and started the engine. The dashboard read 9:42 p.m. My phone lit up with a new message from my lawyer. "Just one confirmation text and I'll begin proceedings under your ownership rights." I stared at the message. My fingers trembled, but the hesitation was gone. I typed 4 words. Do it. Right now. A car horn sounded somewhere in the quiet neighborhood. As I pulled away from the house, they still loved to call our family home. In the rearview mirror, the living room light flickered behind the curtain, glowing like the last sparks of a dying fire. I didn't feel sad. What filled me was rage, pure and solid, like something inside had finally hit its breaking point. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. I answered through Bluetooth as I turned onto the freeway. Piper? A familiar male voice came through. I just saw the message. Are you sure? Yeah, I didn't send that for fun, Ruben. I'm past the breaking point. Ruben Hart, my attorney, the one who had warned me more than once to act before things got out of hand, was silent for a few seconds. I'll need your signature on a few documents. Monday morning, 9 o'clock. My office in Gaslamp? I'll be there. No more delays. I hung up just as I hit the next intersection, fury still simmering under my skin. Not from being insulted. I'd long grown numb to that. What burned was how easily they tried to saddle me with $21,000 like I was some walking ATM hidden in their coat closet. The Prius slid neatly into my apartment complex's parking lot. I stepped out, turned on the hallway light, and looked around at the chipped paint and cold concrete floors. Small and worn as it was, everything here was mine. Every spoon, every curtain, even the old electric stove. Each item bought with my own money. No one helped, no one interfered. I pulled a plumbing invoice from the drawer, still smelling of fresh ink. It read, "Paid by Harper Douglas." Below was the address of the Golden Hill house where my mother lounged on the sofa I bought every afternoon, while June casually ordered pizza delivery without giving gas prices a second thought. From the cabinet, I pulled out the thick file Ruben had helped me compile over the past 3 months. Proof of my legal ownership of the house. Title transfer papers, tax receipts, maintenance payment history, notes documenting every payment I'd made directly to the utilities. Everything was sorted, neat, ready. Ready for the day I refused to carry them any further. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my small apartment, surrounded only by the ticking of the clock and the streetlight glow dancing across the ceiling. I thought about every time I'd been called stubborn, difficult, the odd one. I remembered those family dinners where I was mocked for not having a husband, no kids, for not living somewhere respectable like a normal person. They called me selfish, but never once asked if I needed help. I covered 2 rounds of home repairs, 1 hospital bill for Mom, even June's credit card debt last year. Every time came with the same promise. Things will be different next time. But nothing changed. Just bigger demands, more polished manipulation. I grabbed a blank sheet of paper and wrote down each name. Richard Douglas, Elaine Douglas, June Simmons. I wasn't writing out of anger. I was writing to remind myself. This was the boundary. This was the point where I chose to hold on to what was left of my life. At dawn, I sent Ruben an email with a simple subject line. Initiate proceedings. I confirm everything. I stepped out onto the balcony, steam rising from my cup of coffee. The San Diego sun crept slowly above the low-rise buildings in the distance. Everything felt unusually still, as if the air itself understood I was on the verge of breaking out of a never-ending loop. Message came in from June. Changed your mind yet? You're really going to let Dad get threatened over a few grand? Do you even have a heart? I didn't reply, just took a screenshot. It might come in handy later if they tried twisting the story again. By noon, Mom called. 3 times in a row. Then a voicemail. Harper, don't blow this out of proportion. Family is family. You can't be so ungrateful. Ungrateful? I looked around the apartment, then at the map taped to my wall. Places I once dreamed of visiting, each mark a trip delayed because of them. Not anyone else, just me, letting loyalty overrule reason for too long. I opened the bottom drawer where I kept a handwritten letter from my grandmother. The only person who ever believed I was strong enough to live life on my own terms. Her shaky handwriting still read clearly. Don't let anyone decide your worth, not even your family. I folded the letter and slipped it into my purse. Reuben had scheduled me for 9 o'clock sharp tomorrow morning. I'd be there. The little cafe on the corner of Grape and 10th hadn't even filled up for the morning rush when two all too familiar figures pushed through the door. I was typing the final lines of a client's website redesign when I heard heels clicking and a voice too close for comfort. "Harper, I ordered your coffee, low sugar, just how you like it." June sat down across from me without waiting for an invitation. My mother followed right after, looking too polished in her pastel cardigan and pearl earrings, an outfit she saved for times she wanted to play the model parent. She set her purse down, eyes fixed on me like I was a runaway child. I closed my laptop without saying a word. June smiled, her cheeks blushed with makeup and whatever script she'd rehearsed. "We need to talk about Dad. Mom's really worried. We're being threatened, Harper." Mom nodded robotically. "You can't just turn your back on your family right now. Family is where you belong, not something you walk away from." I glanced out the window, where sunlight cut through the tall palm trees lining the sidewalk. "If you're so worried, why not sell that Lexus you're driving, or the Rolex Dad wears even though we're supposedly in a rough patch?" June gripped her coffee cup with both hands. "You're being selfish. You have no kids to care for. No husband, no mortgage. You live alone in that matchbox. And no one needs you but us." I was head and hollow. No one needs you but family. That line hits harder if you say it like this. No one uses you but family. My mother frowned, slowly pulled out a tissue and dabbed at eyes that had yet to shed a single tear. "You're insulting the very people who raised you." I leaned forward, hands on the table. "Raised me? Dad gambled away my college fund. You pretended not to notice. I had to take loans, work 2 jobs to survive, and now your daughter, the one you never respected, is the legal owner of the house you're living in. You just don't know it." The air turned to ice. June froze mid-stir, spoon suspended in air. "What?" My mom's voice pitched upward. I pulled a copy of the property deed from my purse, laid it on the table, tapping the name. "Harper Douglas. You're not mistaken. That home you host parties in, the one with the family is everything plate in the front yard, it belongs to the woman you call a parasite." June shook her head. "No, you're joking. There's no way." "The owner? Oh, I'm not just the owner. I paid the property taxes, replaced the roof 3 times, installed new plumbing, and covered your utility bills every time you cranked the A/C to full blast and blamed a billing error." My mother's face drained of color. "Why didn't you say something earlier?" I smiled. This time, there was no exhaustion behind it. "Because I wanted to believe if I gave enough, you'd finally appreciate it. But all you've ever done is take, then criticize, mock my small apartment, my single status, my lifestyle, all while living off the sweat I poured into that house." June pushed her chair back, nearly shouting. "You're selfish. You're throwing your whole family out over a tantrum." I picked up my coffee, stood slowly, and looked them in the eye. "This isn't a tantrum. This is closure. This is the end of being treated like your personal ATM. This is where it stops." I paused at the doorway and turned to face them both. Family doesn't manipulate one another. Family doesn't use fake tears and sweet words to force someone to sacrifice their life over someone else's mistakes. My mother stood frozen, while June turned away, hiding her face behind her phone. Unclear whether out of shame or to find someone else to clean up the mess that had just been exposed. I stepped outside. The morning breeze was crisp. The sunlight had softened since earlier. My phone buzzed gently in my hand. A message from Reuben. "I've received your confirmation. Legal proceedings begin today. I'll send the formal notice within 48 hours. I pressed and held the message, pinned it to the top of my inbox. My steps felt lighter. Tomorrow they'd receive the first package. a notice to vacate due to unauthorized residency, sent by the very person they once called the family's biggest disappointment. Late Saturday afternoon, I stood in front of the house bearing my name, black crossbody backpack slung over one shoulder, phone in hand with the camera ready. They said they'd be at Aunt Meredith's for her daughter's birthday party. One of those events I was never invited to, even though it was just 2 blocks away. I chose that moment to do what I should have done long ago: walk into the house I'd paid for over 5 years without ever living in it. The lock was still the one I'd installed when I signed the ownership papers. I slid in the key and turned gently. The door creaked open, and a strong stench hit me in the face. Cigarette smoke, stale grease, and something damp, like wet fabric left to rot in a rain barrel. I stepped in and turned on the light. The fluorescent bulb flickered for a moment before fully lighting the room. The living room left me stunned. The hardwood floor I once had polished to a shine was now scarred with scratches, even circular burn marks from what looked like forgotten cigarette butts. The custom cream sofa was now covered with old kitchen towels, stained with coffee. A half-eaten pizza box sat on the table, flies circling above. I took pictures of every corner, every stain, every peeling patch of paint. As I entered the kitchen, the fridge door groaned like it was complaining. One cabinet door was hanging off a broken hinge. The granite countertop had a crack stretching over 2 hand lengths, water damage visible along the line. I remembered exactly how much I'd paid to replace that countertop 3 years ago. Nearly $4,000, from savings I'd set aside instead of taking a trip I'd planned. Under the sink, black water stains spread across the warped wood cabinets, swollen from mold. The house's smell clung to my skin and hair. I opened the window, letting in cold air just to keep myself from gagging. The staircase creaked with every step. When I entered the main bathroom, the reflection in the mirror stunned me, but not because of me. Behind me on the back wall was a massive patch of black mold, stretching from the ceiling down to the bottom of the bathtub, like a dark blood stain. I had once transferred $1,800 to my mom when she claimed the plumbing was leaking badly, urgent repairs needed, or it would be a health risk. Where was the plumber? Where were the repairs? My old bedroom, once my safe corner as a child, had become June's makeup studio. A large mirror covered the entire wall. On the floor were piles of makeup boxes, dirty brushes, and unopened wine bottles. The closet, where I once kept my grandmother's jewelry box, now had its lock removed. I searched frantically, heart pounding. The old teal box with brass patterns was gone. Instantly, I recalled the only time Mom and June had shown up at my apartment unannounced, claiming they were worried because Harper hadn't responded to texts in 3 days. I had been buried in a deadline and forgot to turn on my phone. They arrived, smiling sweetly, carrying a tin of cookies, their eyes scanning every corner of my space. I thought I was being paranoid. Turns out, I was just too trusting. I stood there silently. The wall to the left of the closet still bore the mark where a nail once held my graduation photo with Grandma. That photo was also gone. My phone buzzed. A message from Ruben. Don't forget to record everything. These damages can support a compensation claim. I nodded to myself, reopened the camera, and captured every patch of mold, every strip of peeled paint, every exposed socket. June's room had dirty shoe prints on the wall. Her idea of creative interiors, once flaunted on Instagram. The mahogany desk, the only piece I'd kept from Grandma, was dotted with cup rings, chipped on one corner, the varnish peeling in patches. As I made my way back downstairs, I heard the iron gate creak. I immediately shut off the lights and hid behind the curtain. My mother's voice floated in, followed by June's high heels. "What's that smell?" June snapped. "This place is a rat hole." "Harper thinks she's being tough, but she'll cave. She always does," my mother scoffed. "Worst case, we sell Grandma's sapphire ring. That should get us a few grand." My heart clenched. I didn't see her gold necklace. It was pretty. If we pair it with the ring, we could get even more, June added. I stood still. Everything was clearer than ever. No room left for doubt, no more time to wait. I slipped quietly out the back door and returned to my small apartment in silence. The musty smell still clung to my clothes. I didn't change, I just sat down, opened my laptop, and sent one final message. Ruben, I've confirmed the house's condition. They've taken valuable personal belongings and are planning to sell them. Let's proceed to the next step. Monday morning began with a string of missed calls from Mom. The name Elaine Douglas flashed across my screen for the sixth time before I powered off the phone. I had already anticipated their reaction once Ruben's official notice to vacate was delivered via certified mail. It wasn't the truth that shocked them, it was the fact that the truth came from someone they never thought would speak up. By midday, my inbox was full of messages and voicemails from all three, Mom, Dad, and June, a chorus of rage, guilt-tripping, and manipulation. You're a traitor. You're destroying the family over a few bucks? You'll die alone with this guilt. We'll take this to court if you don't back down. I read each line like I was watching an old play, acted by the same cast, using the same script, only now the audience wasn't sitting quietly anymore. By 3 p.m., Ruben called. Harper, we've got a situation. They just filed a countersuit against you at the county court. I gripped the phone. What lawsuit? They're accusing you of elder abuse, hiding ownership to fraudulently seize the property. They claim you were manipulated by an attorney to steal your biological parents' home. I let out a dry laugh. They came up with that pretty fast. You've got evidence, but we'll need more if we want to shut them down early. Video, witnesses, documents. The more objective, the better. And I didn't hesitate. I'll talk to Valentina. Valentina Chavez, the neighbor right next door to the Golden Hill house, was a sharp-eyed woman with a memory that missed nothing. She'd lived there over 20 years and used to give me sweet rolls back when I was in third grade. She always observed quietly, rarely spoke much, but somehow made you feel she knew more than she ever said. When I rang her doorbell, she opened the door without surprise. I figured you'd come by sooner or later. Her living room was unusually tidy. On the tea table were 2 cups of chamomile already brewed. She sat me down and pulled a USB drive from a drawer, placing it gently on the table. This has 5 years of footage from my security cameras. Clear shots of Richard banging on your door drunk, Elaine screaming at you on the porch because you brought home the wrong fruit, even the time June snuck into your room and took your jewelry box. My eyes widened. Why didn't you say something earlier? Because you weren't ready. Now you are, and so am I. We sat together and played the first video. The screen showed my father hurling a beer can at the wall after I refused to co-sign a loan last year. Another clip showed my mom yelling outside my door because I skipped her Mother's Day party due to work overload. Then came June, wearing a white hoodie, face half covered by a mask, unlocking my apartment with a spare key taken from Mom's purse, rummaging through my drawer, and stealing the teal jewelry box with the brass pattern. I stared at my trembling hands, not from fear, but because everything I had once doubted, agonized over, now had images, sound, and timestamps. Valentina didn't need to say more. She just looked at me and nodded. Don't let them flip the story. You've endured enough. I took the USB, thanked her with everything I could find in words, and left. The next morning, Ruben's office was bathed in bright sunlight. I handed over the evidence and a full log of financial transactions from the past 5 years. He watched a few clips, nodding steadily. We're going to counter. Soon. They never expected the trump card to come from the neighbor. On the table, my phone lit up. June calling. Then Mom. Then Dad. I didn't pick up. I didn't need to hear more to know they wouldn't stop unless forced to. Ruben printed the legal response. They've started a war they're not equipped to win, but we'll go by the book. Precise, no loopholes. I nodded. Every pain once dismissed now had receipts. The corridor of the San Diego County Courthouse glowed under cold fluorescent lights. I sat upright on the wooden bench, eyes fixed on the trio huddled down the hall. Richard wore a wrinkled suit, his stance wobbly. Elaine had soft makeup on, clearly trying to play the part of a kind-hearted mother. June, in a fresh pastel dress, clung to her phone, though I could see her swollen eyelids behind a thick layer of concealer. The courtroom door opened. The clerk called the case name. Reuben glanced at me and tilted his head slightly. "Let's go. Time to watch the lies collapse." Courtroom 4 was spacious but cold like a storage vault. Judge Madeline Harlow, probably in her 60s, swept a stern gaze across the room before signaling the start. The defendant's lawyer, a mild-voiced middle-aged man, began with a tearful tale of elderly parents deceived by their own daughter to steal their home. He claimed I had used legal tricks to manipulate them, exploiting their trust to force them into financial insecurity. While he went on, my mom dabbed her eyes with a tissue, and my dad bowed his head dramatically. I looked at Reuben. He remained calm as always. When it was his turn, he got straight to the point. He submitted financial records, property tax receipts I'd paid, repair bills, utility costs, maintenance expenses, all in my name, backed by bank statements. Troy. Your Honor, for 5 full years, the plaintiff covered every operational cost of the disputed home, while the defendants lived there without a lease and without paying a dime toward anything. Additionally, they committed personal property violations, specifically theft of inherited assets as shown in security footage provided by the next-door neighbor. Reuben opened his laptop and connected to the large screen in the center of the courtroom. The footage played in sharp clarity. June sneaking into my apartment, taking the jewelry box. My mother stood guard at the door like a seasoned lookout. The courtroom went silent, like someone had cut the power. Next came the video of my father banging on the door after I refused to co-sign a credit loan, followed by my mother berating me simply for missing a party she hosted. The judge didn't hide the shift in her demeanor. She removed her glasses, leaned back in her chair, and turned her gaze toward my family. Do the defendants have anything to say in response? My mother jumped to her feet. This is all a misunderstanding. That girl, she's always tried to separate herself from the family. We raised her. We have the right to live in that house. Reuben immediately interrupted. Your Honor, none of their statements change the legal fact. This property is under my client's name. The defendants hold no legal or financial interest in it. The judge turned to June and asked, Miss Simmons, is the person in the video you? June stammered, then muttered softly, I was just borrowing. I planned to return it. Judge Harlow shook her head firmly. Theft doesn't become kindness just because it's done by a relative. My father stood up angrily, pointing at me. She's my daughter. We put her through school. She owes us. I rose, my voice ringing clear. You drained my college fund to take vacations? I worked 2 jobs all 4 years of university to pay my tuition. While Dad gambled, Mom bought designer purses. Everything I have, I earned. No one has the right to take it back. The judge raised her hand, signaling for silence. The room thickened with tension. The court hereby declares that the property ownership belongs to Ms. Harper Douglas. The defendants have 30 days to vacate or pay fair market rent. Failure to do so will result in formal eviction. My mother screamed. No, you can't do this. We're her parents. The judge replied in a calm, hammer-like tone. Being parents doesn't entitle you to emotionally or financially exploit your child. Reuben turned to me and gave a subtle nod. I sat down, heart pounding. It took a moment to register. I had just won. Outside the courtroom, my mother grabbed my sleeve and hissed. You'll die alone. No one could ever love someone like you. I gently removed her hand. If love looks like threats and lies, I'd rather live without it. June avoided my eyes and pulled Mom away. My father glared at me like I had just burned down all their wealth, something they never truly owned in the first place. I stepped slowly down the courthouse stairs. The sky had turned gray, the air smelled of damp soil, hinting at rain. My phone buzzed with a text from Ruben. They'll handle the formal eviction notice. They may still lash out, but from now on, everything will be under the law's control. Day 30 arrived under a heavy sky, thick clouds blanketing the Golden Hill neighborhood. I parked across the street, watching from inside my car as the moving truck backed into the driveway, wheels crunching the uneven brick pavement. Everything was unfolding exactly as the court ordered. Richard came out first, dragging a red suitcase, face dark with fury. Elaine followed, still wearing her usual cream cardigan, but no longer hiding how worn out she looked. June's suitcase clattered over the doorstep. She didn't carry much. Just her makeup box and a worn designer bag, I was certain came from one of her investments. As I stepped out of the car, they spotted me. Elaine approached, clutching her purse like I was a thief. "Are you proud of yourself? Kicking your own family out into the street? You should be ashamed." I stood still. "You're mistaken. The court didn't evict family. It removed unlawful occupants from a property they didn't own." June's voice cracked with rage as she cut in. "What have you ever done to deserve this family's trust? You lived like a stranger for years. Then suddenly you show up and take everything?" "I didn't take anything. I protected what should have been respected from the beginning. If I'm a stranger, it's because none of you ever treated me like family." Richard stepped closer, glaring hard. "You think you've won, huh? You think money means everything?" I met his stare without blinking. "No, Dad. But having boundaries means I'm no longer suffocated by blood ties used as chains." June spat. "You'll rot alone in that matchbox house. No one could ever love someone like you." I smiled, light as wind brushing a collar. "I'd rather live alone in a place I choose than be surrounded by people who treat love like a weapon." They left without looking back. The moving truck rolled slowly toward the intersection, leaving behind a quiet yard littered with cigarette butts, crushed cans, and scraps of torn paper. That afternoon, I called a locksmith. A silver-haired man worked carefully, installing the smart lock I requested. Once he left, I stood in the empty house, taking it all in. The peeling walls and scratched floors no longer screamed chaos. They felt still. No shouting, no criticism, no dodging glances. I walked through each room, sketching plans in my head. The living room would be painted soft ivory, the floor replaced with light oak. June's old studio would become a reading nook, or maybe a private rental. The broken mahogany table would be swapped out for the handcrafted one I'd already picked from a local woodshop. A week later, the renovation crew arrived. Walls were stripped and repainted. The stench of smoke was replaced by a gentle citrus aroma from the diffuser. Noon sunlight spilled through the dust-free kitchen windows, making the granite counters gleam brighter than the day they were installed. I didn't move in. Every morning I still left my tiny apartment, coffee in hand, heading to that house like a homeowner with a job to finish. By the time the contractors wrapped up the interior work, I posted a rental notice. A fully furnished, spotless unit. Ideal for a newlywed couple or someone working remotely. The first tenants were a young couple, an elementary school teacher and a software engineer. They loved the quiet atmosphere and the small backyard garden, where I had just planted a few lavender bushes. On the day they signed the lease, I handed them the new keys and gave a gentle smile. When the woman thanked me, her eyes lit up with excitement about their very first home. That's when I realized this place was finally being used for what it was meant to be. A space to build, not to claim. That evening, I returned to my own little apartment. The moss-green velvet sofa still held a trace of warmth, and the ginger tea in my mug sent steam curling into the air. I opened the window and listened to the distant hum of traffic. Old jazz drifting from the corner restaurant. A message from Ruben popped up. "Congratulations, they did an appeal, it's officially over." I didn't reply right away. I set the phone down, stood up, and walked over to the wall where I once hung my graduation photo, now reprinted and newly framed. I placed my hand on the cool glass, eyes resting on the smile of the girl in the picture. The one who used to try so hard to please everyone, who believed that if she loved enough, people would love her back. She hadn't disappeared. She had grown up. She'd stopped waiting for validation and given herself the peace no one else ever truly intended to offer. Harper's story is a powerful reminder that family ties don't grant permission to betray trust. In the real world, many still endure pain under the weight of the word family. But like Harper, each of us has the right to set boundaries, to protect our property, dignity, and peace of mind. Sometimes the bravest act isn't unconditional forgiveness. It's standing up, saying enough, and moving forward, even alone. Because true freedom begins with a choice. What do you think about Harper's decision? Was she too harsh, or was it necessary to protect herself? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt, meaningful family stories ahead.